I'm Lauren, 35. I threw a dinosaur birthday party for my 8-year-old son, Mason, invited the entire family, and not a single one of them showed up. If you were standing in my shoes at 35, looking at your child's hopeful eyes across an empty yard, what would you do next? It was a bright April morning in Rochester, Minnesota, and spring was everywhere, soft green on the trees, the smell of damp earth, the promise of warm afternoons. My little house sat at the end of a quiet street, the backyard full of makeshift decorations, cardboard dinosaurs painted after bedtime streamer, vines strung from the old maple, and a stegosaurus cake I had stayed up until 2 a.m. Frosting. Mason had been awake before dawn, tiptoeing into my room, clutching the birthday shirt I'd laid out for him, a faded green tee with a roaring T-Rex. "Do you think they'll like it, Mom?" he whispered. I told him yes, that of course his family would love everything he'd planned. I told him what I always told myself, maybe this year would be different. Every part of that morning, I tried to soak in the details. Mason setting out tiny party favors on the table, his handwritten name cards, the little pile of gifts he'd wrapped for his cousin Riley. He made sure the welcome banner was straight, then ran to the kitchen to help me carry out bowls of popcorn and his favorite blue punch. I watched him peer out the window every few minutes, his eyes sparkling, his excitement so big it almost hurt to see. For weeks, he'd counted down the days. Brittany and Riley are coming right, and Grandma Cheryl, he asked me just as he had nearly every night leading up to this moment. I always said yes. I needed to believe it too. Mason's belief in his family was beautiful and heartbreaking. He didn't see the pattern the way I did. He didn't notice the difference between the gifts he'd received at Christmas and the gifts Riley unwrapped, the difference between the phone calls and visits. He saw every year as a new chance, not a repeating story. Maybe that was why I worked so hard this time. I'd put aside $400 each month for 5 months, money from tutoring, after school, grocery savings, things I never mentioned to Mason. Every napkin, every balloon, every dinosaur-shaped sandwich was a promise to him that he mattered, that he belonged. I even wrote out invitations by hand, sent texts and reminders, followed up with Brittany and Mom to make sure the date was set. They both confirmed. "Wouldn't miss it," Brittany had replied. Mom sent a smiley face, and I can't wait to see my little dino. By noon, our backyard was a sea of green and orange. I turned on Mason's favorite playlist and tried to keep my nerves at bay. He ran outside and back in, asking, "Should I wait on the porch? Do you think they'll be here soon?" I told him. "Maybe they're just running late. People always get caught up on weekends." He nodded, but his voice grew smaller each time. Still, he grinned when I brought out the stegosaurus cake, took a deep breath, and practiced what he would say when Grandma and Brittany arrived. I thought about all the birthdays from my own childhood, how somehow Brittany's cake was always bigger, her parties louder, the camera always pointed her way. It was hard not to let old hurt seep into new hope, but I kept that inside. I was determined to give Mason what I'd wanted all those years, the feeling that he was enough. Minutes ticked by. The sun climbed higher. The first hour passed with Mason glued to the window, then pacing, then sitting on the swing and tracing patterns in the dirt with his shoe. I set out plates, double-checked the RSVP text, and tried to ignore the pit forming in my stomach. Mason called Riley's phone, let it ring and ring, then set it down without a word. When 2 o'clock came and went, the hope in Mason's eyes started to flicker. He asked, "Mom, do you think they forgot?" I swallowed the ache in my chest and squeezed his hand. "No, sweetheart. I'm sure they're just busy, but they'll be here soon." But I knew the pattern. For as long as I could remember, Brittany was the golden child. She could break a window and still get a hug, forget a birthday and still get a parade. Mason, like me, was always waiting for a place at the table. By 3, the sun was sliding toward the trees. No cars pulled up. No familiar voices came through the gate. The balloons drooped a little in the heat. The cake began to sweat under its frosting. Mason sat quietly on the porch, clutching the present he'd picked for Riley, a dinosaur keychain he'd spent his own allowance on. He looked at me, searching for answers. I sat down beside him and did what I'd always done, tried to make the best of it, tried to carry both our hearts through another disappointment. But something shifted that afternoon. For the first time, I let myself admit the truth. Sometimes the people you wait for the longest are the ones least willing to show up. As dusk settled over the yard, Mason rested his head on my shoulder and whispered, "Do you think they'll come next year?" I wrapped my arms around him, unsure how to answer, and wondered if I don't change something. Will this just keep repeating? Looking back, I can map the whole pattern like a trail of breadcrumbs leading from my own childhood right to that empty birthday yard. After Mason went to sleep that night, his dinosaur shirt bunched under his chin, I sat at the kitchen table and let old memories bubble up. They say your past is never really gone. Sometimes it just waits for a quiet night to slip back in. When I was a kid, my family lived in a small ranch house off Elmwood. My mom, Cheryl, was the sort who always kept our fridge stocked and made sure Brittany's ballet recitals were written in red on the calendar. Brittany, 3 years younger, was the star, the golden child. Even when I tried my best, it was Brittany who got the cheers. At every birthday, the camera seemed to tilt just a little more her way. Her cakes towered over mine, her gifts always wrapped in shiny bows, while mine felt like afterthoughts, puzzles, missing pieces, a sweater one size too small. I remembered Christmas mornings, the tree piled high with boxes labeled, "To Brittany Love Grandma." I'd get a journal or socks sometimes with the tag still on from last year's clearance. Mom would say, "Brittany's been through a lot. She deserves a little extra," as if my own struggles were invisible. During summer breaks, Brittany got to go to camp while I stayed home to watch the neighbors' kids and help with chores. When Brittany forgot Mother's Day she's just busy with school, Lauren. When I forgot, I'd get a week of cold shoulders. It didn't get easier when I grew up. When I graduated from college, the first in our family, Mom sent a congratulatory text, but didn't make the drive. When Brittany finished cosmetology school, Mom threw a backyard barbecue banners and all, and invited everyone from the neighborhood. Brittany married young, had Riley, and overnight became the center of every holiday. Christmas at Brittany's house meant big gifts. For Riley, brand new phone gift cards, trendy clothes. Mason would get a $10 puzzle or a used book. I told myself Mason didn't notice, but he did. A few years ago, Mason drew a picture of our family for Cheryl. It was full of colors, dinosaurs, even a tiny cupcake in the corner. He handed it to her with a shy grin. Mom smiled, patted his head, and left the picture on the counter. The next week, Riley's stick figure drawing was front and center on the fridge, surrounded by magnet letters spelling out "Best Granddaughter." Still, I tried to keep the door open. I took Mason to every birthday, every awkward holiday, every family dinner, where we'd show up with homemade cupcakes while Brittany arrived late with store-bought treats. I played along, making small talk, trying not to let the old pain show. I'd always hoped deep down that Mason would get the family he deserved, that if I just kept reaching out someday, things would change. But it's hard to outrun old stories. The more I tried, the more obvious it became. There was always a reason Brittany and Riley got more. Mason's birthdays were just another day. His handmade cards cute, but were busy. My mom's hugs for Brittany, her proud Facebook posts for Riley were things Mason and I learned not to expect. I started noticing all the little ways I bent over backward, calling Brittany to check in on her bad days, remembering every milestone for Riley showing up when nobody else would. Each year I told myself, this year will be different. Maybe this is the year they see us. And every year Mason waited by the window just like I used to, hoping someone would walk through the door and say, "I'm here for you." I ended that night staring at Mason's dino poster, the bright green smiling face, and realized how much history was folded into a single birthday. My son's pain was not just his own, it was the echo of all those years I'd hoped for something more. I tucked Mason in, promised him tomorrow would feel better, and lay awake counting all the times I'd tried, wondering when hope turns into denial. When the house is quiet, you hear everything, the squeak of a swing in the yard, the hum of the fridge, the sound of your own heart, wondering what else you could have done. In the days before Mason's birthday, I tried to fill our home with anticipation, not anxiety. I wanted him to see that love is shown in effort, not just words. That meant planning started early. 5 months before the big day, I opened a new savings envelope in the kitchen drawer. Every time I got paid, I slipped in $40 or $50 money from private tutoring after school, from skipping coffee runs, from buying store-brand cereal instead of the name brand Mason liked best. By March, I had nearly $2,000 set aside, more than I'd ever spent on a party in my life. Mason was involved every step of the way. We spent weekends scouring thrift stores for dinosaur decor, making garlands out of green construction paper, and painting a big wooden sign that said Mason's Dino World. Each night, Mason would sit at the table and draw up his guest list in colored pencil. Should I invite Grandma first or Riley, he'd ask. Every week he added a new detail. Brittany likes chocolate cake, so we should have some. Riley's favorite color is purple, so let's use purple plates. There was a kind of hopefulness in his planning that made my chest ache. He spent his own allowance on a keychain for Riley, wrapping it carefully and taping a note inside, "From Mason. your cousin dino expert. I did my part too, handwriting invitations, following up by text, politely nudging everyone to RSVP. Brittany replied quickly, wouldn't miss it for the world. Cheryl sent back a heart emoji, then a list of snacks Mason should have at his party. Each confirmation felt like a small victory. Maybe, just maybe this year, we would fill the backyard with laughter and family. Evenings after Mason was asleep, I'd find him dreaming with his dinosaur plush clutched in his arms. I would sit at the table sorting receipts for decorations and snacks, reviewing my to-do list banners, balloons, cake order, party favors. It was exhausting, but in the best way. Sometimes late at night, doubt crept in. What if this year was like all the rest? What if I was building Mason up just to watch him fall? But Mason's excitement was contagious. Every morning, he'd bounce out of bed. How many more days, Mom? I counted with him, my voice strong, even if my heart wavered. One afternoon, Mason stood at the kitchen counter looking at our envelope of party money. You work so hard, Mom. Do you think Grandma and Riley know how special this is? I tried to smile. I think they will, sweetheart. I think this year, everyone will see. As the dates circled on the calendar grew closer, Mason wrote out his final list. Brittany, Riley, Cheryl, a couple friends from school. He decorated each invitation with his own dino sketches. We drove around to deliver a few in person, Mason buzzing with pride as he handed them over. He asked, do you think Brittany will play the fossil game with me? I promised, she'll love it. Each night, I found new ways to reassure him and myself that this would be different. Mason believed it, so I wanted to believe it too. The night before his birthday, we set out every party supply, napkins, banners, extra balloons, until our kitchen looked like a party store exploded. Mason taped his drawing to the fridge next to an old picture of him and Riley in matching dinosaur hats. Tomorrow is going to be the best day ever, Mom, he said, voice sleepy but certain. I tucked him in, promising that tomorrow would be full of surprises, that family would show up, that all this work would matter. Then in the darkness, I lay awake wondering whether hope is something you build brick by brick or something that can crumble in a single afternoon. April 2024, Rochester, Minnesota. The day of Mason's 8th birthday. Sunlight poured through the kitchen as I woke to Mason already dressed in his dinosaur shirt, peering through the window at our backyard. Balloons bobbed in the morning breeze, the party table ready with dino plates, his handmade name cards neatly set beside each chair. Do you think they'll be early, he asked, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. I forced a smile. Maybe. Let's finish setting up the games, then we'll check again. We set up the fossil hunt, lined up the cupcakes, and double-checked the playlist. By 11, the backyard was perfect, a sea of green-orange and Mason's favorite blue. Every few minutes, Mason dashed to the porch, straining to see down the street. I could feel his excitement giving way to nervous energy. It's okay, I told him, smoothing his hair. They'll come. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Brittany. So sorry, Riley has a last-minute audition. Won't make it. Give Mason a hug for us. Let's celebrate soon. My hands shook. I looked at Mason, then quickly turned the screen away. Was that them? He asked, eyes wide. They're just running late. I lied. An hour later, another message. Cheryl, this time, not feeling well today. Migraine hit me hard. Hope Mason has a wonderful time. I'll call him tonight. No call from Brittany, no call from Cheryl. I tried to hide my disappointment, kept the music going, cut a slice of cake just in case, but inside I was unraveling. Friends from school couldn't make it either, a soccer game, a cold family trips. One by one, the excuses rolled in. The clock crept past noon, then 1, then 2. Mason, once buzzing, grew quiet, then sat on the swing tracing circles in the dirt with his shoe. Do you think I did something wrong? He finally asked, voice no louder than a whisper. My heart broke. No, sweetheart, you did everything right. I'm so proud of you. He forced a smile and offered me a piece of cake. Maybe we can save the rest for next year when everyone can come. I knotted my throat tight. I tried to salvage the day. We played the games, just the two of us. I helped him open his presents, my own gifts, a handful from his classmates' parents, and the small package from Brittany, a cheap puzzle, the price tag still on. The gift Riley would have loved, the dinosaur keychain, stayed unopened on the table. As afternoon faded, Mason asked to go inside. I found him curled up with his dino plush, his party hat sliding off one ear. I sat with him, not saying anything, unsure if any words could reach the spot where hope had lived only hours before. Later, after I'd cleared the untouched plates and boxed up slices of cake, I checked my phone out of habit. There it was, an Instagram post from Brittany. She and Riley all smiles at the local mall, sharing ice cream time-stamped right in the middle of Mason's party. The caption, Saturday with my girls, so proud of Riley and her audition. A piece of me wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I sat in the quiet feeling old pain and new disappointment settle side by side. Mason's belief had been a fragile, beautiful thing. That day, I watched it bend under the weight of another broken promise. As dusk closed in, I tucked Mason into bed. He clung to his plush eyes shining in the dark. "Do you think next year will be better?" I swallowed, then kissed his forehead. "I hope so, Mason. I really hope so." But deep down, I was beginning to see if I didn't change something, this pain would just keep finding us. Late April 2024, Rochester, Minnesota. The days after Mason's birthday were gray and oddly silent. Balloons sagged against the fence, and the leftover cake sat untouched in the fridge. I moved through the house like someone walking underwater, going through the motions but unable to shake the heaviness in my chest. Mason was different. He stopped asking about Brittany or Riley. He didn't mention Grandma Cheryl, and when he walked past his dino banner, he looked away. At school, Mrs. Carter called me aside. "Mason's been quiet," she said gently. "He keeps to himself at recess, and he's not reading his dinosaur books anymore. I thought you should know." I thanked her, telling myself it was just the letdown from his party. But I knew better. There was a shadow now, one that settled over both of us. At home, Mason spent more time in his room building elaborate dinosaur worlds, but keeping them hidden behind closed doors. The gift he'd bought for Riley remained on his dresser, wrapped and waiting. Sometimes I'd hear him whispering to his plush, quiet words I couldn't quite catch. One evening, while scrolling through my phone, I saw Brittany's Instagram post again. There they were, Brittany and Riley, all smiles at the mall ice cream cones raised in a toast. The timestamp matched exactly when Mason had been sitting on the porch waiting. There were other photos, too. Cheryl grinning in the background, a group selfie with the caption, "Girls' Day wouldn't miss it for anything." I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. Maybe Brittany had forgotten. Maybe Riley's audition was truly a last-minute thing. But the evidence was there in digital ink. My family had chosen each other, not us. That night, I tried to talk to Mason as I tucked him in. "Hey, buddy, you can talk to me, about anything." He shrugged, pulling the covers up. "I just wish they wanted to come." I tried to tell him none of this was his fault. "You're wonderful, Mason. You did everything right." He nodded, but the doubt lingered in his eyes. "Maybe next year." Mrs. Carter sent home a note the next day. "I'm here if you want to talk about how Mason's doing." I started a list in my journal every time Mason asked about family, every time he flinched at the sound of my phone. I saved the screenshots, kept the Instagram post, held on to the text that started with apologies and ended with excuses. Part of me was furious. Another part just felt tired. I realized as I watched Mason pull away from the things he once loved that I could not make my family show up, not for me, not for my son. All I could do was be present, gather the evidence, and start thinking about what boundaries really meant. Late one night, I caught Mason sitting by the window, dinosaur plush tucked under his chin. He looked up at the sky, quiet as the stars. "Do you think they miss me?" he whispered. I sat beside him and hugged him close. "I miss you when I'm not with you. That's enough for now." Still, as the days rolled by, I began to see this wasn't just about birthdays or parties or even family. It was about believing the proof in front of me and deciding what to do with it. Early May 2024, Rochester, Minnesota. After weeks of waking up with that heaviness in my chest, I decided it was time to stop making excuses for them for myself. The birthday party was over, but the echo of that day clung to every room in our house. Mason barely spoke about his family anymore. He went through the motions at school, coloring just enough to get by, ignoring the dinosaur books that once lit up his face. I knew what I had to do. I picked up my phone, scrolled through old texts from Cheryl, and pressed call. The phone rang 3 times before my mother answered. Her voice was cheerful as if nothing had happened. "Lauren, hi, how are you? How's my favorite dino boy?" I took a breath. "We need to talk about Mason's birthday, Mom." There was a pause, then a sigh. "Oh, honey, I told you I wasn't feeling well that day. These migraines, I pushed forward, holding on to every scrap of courage. "It wasn't just you." Brittany said, "Riley had an audition, but then you all posted pictures together at the mall. Did you really not realize what that would do to Mason?" Another pause. Then defensiveness crept in. Brittany had planned that outing for Riley for weeks. "Sometimes things change, Lauren. We can't plan our lives around every child's birthday. Besides, Mason is resilient. He'll bounce back. You should know that by now." My grip tightened on the phone. "Mom, it's not just one party. It's every holiday. every school event. Mason gets overlooked, and you know it. Riley gets the big gifts, the celebrations, the posts. Mason gets the leftovers, if anything. She bristled, "You're being dramatic. Brittany has a lot on her plate. She's a single mom too, and Riley is getting ready for high school. You're lucky Mason has such a strong mom. He'll be fine." I felt the familiar sting years of being told I was too sensitive, that I should just move on. This time I didn't back down. "Mom, I'm not calling to fight. I'm calling because I need you to see what this is doing to us. I need you to stop pretending it's nothing." She shifted tactics, softening her tone. "Family means forgiving Lauren. Don't teach Mason to hold grudges. One day you'll see it's better to let things go." I let her words hang in the air, feeling how tired I was of being told to swallow my own hurt. "This isn't about grudges, Mom. This is about boundaries. I can't keep letting Mason get hurt. If you can't be here for him, then we'll have to do things differently." Her voice dropped, as if she finally understood I meant it. "Are you saying you won't come to family events anymore? I'm saying I won't bring Mason to places where he isn't wanted or where he'll be made to feel less than. I need you to understand that. I need Brittany to understand it too." There was silence, and then the call ended. No goodbye, no promise to do better, just the flat click of finality. For the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. Not relief exactly, but something solid, a new kind of resolve. I went to Mason's room and sat beside him as he built his dinosaurs, his hands busy but his eyes distant. "Hey, bud," I said quietly, "I want you to know something. You never have to prove you're good enough for anyone, not even family. I love you. I see you." He looked up, a shadow flickering in his eyes. "Do you still love them?" I took his hand. "I do. But I love you more, and I love myself enough to stop pretending." That night after Mason fell asleep, I wrote Brittany a short message. "We need to talk. Things have to change." She read it but didn't reply. I realized boundaries don't always mean shutting doors. Sometimes they mean closing off old wounds and choosing who gets to come close. The next morning, I called Mrs. Carter to ask about counseling resources at school. She promised to help however she could. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty for putting Mason first. I felt like a real mother, a mother who chose her child even when it meant standing alone. I didn't expect healing to come all at once. At first, it came in fragments, a quiet morning with Mason over pancakes, the gentle way the house felt less heavy, the slow untangling of guilt and longing. I kept my promise. I called the school counselor, Dr. Armstrong, and scheduled a session for Mason. Our first morning at her office, Mason clung to his dino plush eyes fixed on the dinosaur poster across from the door. Dr. Armstrong was gentle, asking questions about Mason's favorite games and letting him talk about prehistoric times before ever mentioning family. Afterwards, she met with me in the hallway. "Mason's carrying a lot, Lauren. Kids don't always have the words for this kind of hurt. The best thing you can do is what you're already doing, being here, being honest, showing him that feelings are safe." Walking home, I felt the smallest lift in my step. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to imagine a new kind of family, one that started with just the two of us. I reached out to Mrs. Carter, letting her know about Mason's counseling and asking for extra support at school. She promised to keep an eye on him, giving him quiet encouragement during group projects, praising even his smallest efforts. At home, I made sure we created new routines, dino, movie nights, afternoon walks at Silver Lake, trying out new recipes together, making our own traditions one Sunday at a time. Mother's Day arrived. Cheryl sent a text, "Miss you both at brunch, maybe next year," and I replied simply, "We're doing something special, just us." It felt strange to say no, but also freeing. We went to Silver Lake, just the two of us. Mason chased geese. I took 100 photos of his smile, and we spread a blanket under the trees with our homemade sandwiches. After our picnic, Mason gave me a card he'd made in secret. On the front was a drawing of 2 dinosaurs holding hands. Inside, he'd written, "Mom, you're the best adventure." I cried not from pain, but from gratitude for every little step towards something better. As the school year wound down, Mason began to open up again. He invited his closest friend from class over for a movie night, showed me the dinosaur city he'd built from blocks, and taped his latest drawings right in the middle of the fridge. He didn't ask about Brittany or Riley. When Grandma Cheryl called, I let it ring and texted her back later. One evening, Mason asked, "Are we still a family, just the two of us?" I knelt down, hugged him close. "Absolutely. We're the best kind of family, one that chooses each other every day." We started a new ritual. Every Friday after dinner, we would write down something good that happened that week and hang it on a string in the living room. winning the class spelling bee, trying a new food, picnic with mom. The line grew longer, and so did our joy. As spring faded into summer, I felt myself letting go of the old pain. Not all at once, but enough to make space for new beginnings. Mason was still healing, so was I. But every time he laughed or handed me another dino drawing or asked for one more story before bed, I knew we were building something real, a family defined not by who shows up, but by the love that stays. On the first warm night of June, we sat outside together, fireflies flickering above the grass. Mason curled against my side, drowsy and content. "Do you think we'll always have each other, Mom?" he murmured. I smiled, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "Always, Mason, no matter what." That night, I wrote on a slip of paper, "Today we chose peace." I hung it on the string right in the center where both of us could see it every day. June 2024, Rochester, Minnesota. Summer had settled over the city, lazy and golden. The school year ended with the kind of fanfare Mason once shied away from streamers in the gym music, thumping classmates, shouting goodbyes. I watched from the back, hands clutched, as Mason walked onto the stage to accept a certificate for resilience and kindness. Mrs. Carter caught my eye, gave a small thumbs up. We celebrated with ice cream on the way home, Mason telling me about the spelling bee and how he finally got up the nerve to invite a friend over. That night, we made our favorite dinner chicken nuggets and homemade mac and cheese, then danced around the living room, stringing up Mason's new artwork for all to see. The next morning, a message from Brittany popped up. "Hey family, BBQ at our place this Sunday. Hope you and Mason can come." Riley's excited to see him. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "Thanks for the invite," I typed, "but we're starting some new traditions this summer. Maybe another time." Cheryl followed up with her own message, a familiar tone of guilt and nostalgia. "You know, family is forever. Doors are always open." I replied, "We're doing well, Mom. Mason and I are happy. Hope you all have a great summer." No drama, no blame. Just the quiet certainty that I was allowed to protect what mattered. Mason didn't ask about the BBQ. He was busy planning a movie marathon for the two of us, drawing more dinosaurs, setting up our Friday night good thing ritual. One evening, as we sat in the backyard watching the fireflies, Mason leaned against me and whispered, "I like our family just the way it is." I smiled, brushing his hair back. "Me too, bud. I really do." By July, Mason's laughter sounded different, full and bright, not stretched thin by hope or worry. He ran through the sprinklers, invited his best friend from school to Silver Lake, filled the fridge with new drawings. I let myself relax into the gentle rhythm of our days, letting go of the ache that had colored every summer before. On a sunny afternoon, Mason handed me a drawing. Two dinosaurs, one big one, small walking side by side, their tails entwined. "Is this us?" I asked, my voice thick. He grinned. "Yeah, we're going on an adventure. Just us." We hung it right in the center of the living room, a daily reminder that love doesn't have to be loud or perfect or even shared by everyone. It just has to be chosen over and over again. I still got the occasional text from Cheryl updates about Riley's grades, a photo of a family picnic I wasn't invited to, a casual thinking of you. I answered politely, but never offered more than I wanted to give. Brittany sent a birthday card for Mason in late June, belated and generic. Mason opened it, smiled, then taped it next to his own artwork and said, "Maybe next year she'll remember my favorite dinosaur." We both laughed, and I realized that hope was still there, softer, less desperate, but alive. On Mason's 8th birthday, just us two, we took a picnic to Silver Lake. No balloons, no elaborate cake, just sandwiches and chips and stories about all the dinosaurs we could name. Mason hugged me, whispering, "This is the best day, Mom." And it was. Because finally I understood family isn't who shows up for the party, it's who stays when the yard is empty, who chooses you every single day. That summer, I learned the power of drawing my own boundaries. I stopped waiting for apologies or invitations that would never come. Instead, I chose the quiet strength of building something new, one backyard picnic, one dino, drawing one Friday ritual at a time. Mason and I learned to celebrate every little victory. His laughter became the soundtrack of our days, not the silence left behind by empty promises. We didn't need a crowd to feel whole, we just needed each other. Maybe some families will never change. Maybe some people will never understand the harm of being left out, no matter how clear the evidence. But for us, peace wasn't about who showed up at the party. It was about who showed up every day when it mattered most. If you've ever had to choose quiet distance over old hurt, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. How did you find your peace? Thank you for listening and for being part of our journey.